Thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate that. Here's what we have coming up tonight.
Court documents newly obtained by Fox News. Do they prove the wife of a senior Justice Department official was actually paid to dig up dirt on President Trump? Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch investigates this new development. Does it support claims of anti-Trump bias by the president's own Justice Department? Congressman Matt Gaetz turns up the heat on Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein today.
What do you have to see before you will appoint a special counsel to investigate the clear bias that has infected this investigation?
New tonight on the Las Vegas shooting, never before seen insights into the police response. Find out what newly obtained search warrant records tell us about the shooter. Plus,
dizzy.
Another American imprisoned by a hostile regime. Will the Trump administration get him out in time? A desperate mother's impassioned plea for help. Tonight.
I don't think that I'm going to see him again alive.
Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. It is not just the texts that purport to show bias by top federal investigators against then-candidate Donald Trump. Fox News has also obtained a court document tonight signed by the co-founder of the opposition research firm Fusion GPS, which put together the so-called dirty dossier. In that statement, Glenn Simpson acknowledges Fusion GPS paid the wife of a senior Justice Department official to investigate Mr. Trump last year. Meanwhile, the biggest tax overhaul in decades is on its way to a final vote next week after congressional Republicans reached a deal. Could have significant changes for businesses and families. Team coverage tonight on Capitol Hill. Doug McElway is here with details. What's in, what's out. But first, the latest on Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein's testimony on Capitol Hill, those texts, the dossier revelation, and much more. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry joins us live. Ed, sounds like things are really heating up.
That's right, Shannon. This new court document you mentioned confirms Fox's original reporting that the wife of a senior Justice Department official helped Fusion GPS dig up that dirt on then-candidate Donald Trump. Tonight, Republicans are demanding answers on whether the unverified information in that Trump dossier led to the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller. Fusion GPS co-founder Glenn Simpson acknowledging in this court document his company last year hired Nellie Orr, the wife of Justice Department official Bruce Orr, who was demoted last week for concealing his meetings with Fusion GPS, which commissioned the dossier containing salacious allegations. That's raising more questions about the Obama Justice Department's objectivity or lack thereof, since Simpson now says he met personally with Bruce Orr, quote, at his request after the November 2016 election to discuss our findings regarding Russia and the election. That was after Orr had met during the 2016 campaign with Christopher Steele, the former British spy who authored the dossier, which is why Republicans today demanded answers from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
Did the FBI pay for the dossier?
I'm not in position to answer that question, Congressman. But
you know the answer to the question?
That is, I believe I know the answer.
But he did not answer that. He also did not answer whether or not the dossier led to surveillance of Trump campaign officials that obviously then led to Robert Mueller and the investigation. One of the president's personal attorneys, Jay Sekulow, meanwhile, said the conflicts of interest within the FBI and the Justice Department over Fusion GPS, quote, is breathtaking in its scope and should spark a second special counsel to be named, Shannon.
All right, Ed, so last night we also broke this story about those texts between FBI officials. A lot of folks said today they weren't too happy about what they saw, and they're really questioning whether that makes them able to be impartial or not. What kind of reaction today?
You're right. It was pretty intense at the House Judiciary Committee, as you can imagine, for Rosenstein. He appointed the special counsel in the Russia probe and tried to claim he does not see an appearance problem with people on Robert Mueller's team donating money to Democrats like Hillary Clinton and then President Barack Obama. That fired up Republicans on the committee, who brandished those stunning anti-Trump text messages you reported on last night, where a former member of the Mueller team, FBI official Peter Strzok, sent to his girlfriend, FBI official Lisa Page, texts where he was calling then-candidate Donald Trump an idiot and cheerleading for Clinton's campaign. Remember, that was while the FBI agent was an integral part of the agency's investigation into her email server. Republicans were furious about other texts, like the one where Strzok actually said he could, quote, smell the Trump support at a Southern Virginia Walmart. And they believe the most explosive text involves the controversial FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, whose wife raked in about $500,000 from a PAC tied to Clinton friend Terry McAuliffe. The problem with this August 2016 text, as you can see, it speaks to a possible conspiracy. Strzok texting to Page, quote, "I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, he being Trump, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk." Well, Rosenstein repeatedly deflected questions about what he knew about this. Watch.
If you have those Walmart shopping Trump voters that Peter Strzok so derided in his text messages, how do they react to that? Do they have confidence in their FBI and their Department of Justice?
We have appropriate internal affairs officers who will get to the bottom of that.
Now, Rosenstein talked about a report that's coming out about all of this. He vaguely said it's due, quote, relatively soon, and he defended Robert Mueller by saying he pushed Strzok out last summer as soon as he learned about the anti-Trump text. Shannon.
All right, Ed Henry live for us tonight with the very latest. Thank you, Ed. All right, my next guest has been pressing for answers from the FBI on the salacious but still unverified so-called Trump dossier. So let's bring in Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. Good to see you tonight, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
It seems like the Deputy Attorney General is indicating he does know more about the dossier. Obviously, he didn't feel like he felt like he was constrained in some way, that he couldn't answer some of these questions. Do you think we're ever going to get an answer about who paid for it, if the FBI paid for any information, and whether or not it was used to secure a warrant to then spy on the Trump team?
Oh, I think it's eventually going to come out. The question is how. Is it going to be forced out through court process or through the IG report? We don't know. You know, it's interesting he admitted there is a dossier because we've sued both the FBI and Justice Department for information about these payments and what was going on with the dossier. They won't even confirm or deny the dossier exists to Judicial Watch, and we're in the middle of a court fight on it. I can't believe the stonewalling I'm getting from the Justice Department and the FBI. Our attorneys are back and forth with them, trying to get information on the dossier, trying to figure out about these FBI texts, and they're playing games with us. And I see they're also playing games with Congress. And the leadership of the FBI and Justice Department need to take ownership over this gamesmanship because it's destroying the credibility and it makes it look like those agencies have something to hide.
Well, interestingly, we referenced this court filing from Glenn Simpson, one of the co-founders of Fusion GPS. He does say in this, and under perjury, penalty of perjury, he said today, bank records reflect that Fusion contracted with Nellie Orr to help our company with its research and analysis of Mr. Trump. Nellie Orr is the wife of a DOJ official who reached out to Fusion GPS before and after the election because he wanted to talk to them about this information about the president. That seems, even by D.C. standards, where a lot of us have spouses that work in different agencies and sometimes we are overlapping in our interests, that seems a little too close for comfort for just about everybody.
Look, Fusion GPS was a Hillary Clinton campaign vendor. And the Justice Department was working hand in glove with it, perhaps paying it money. I think that the suspicion is they were paying them money. Top DOJ official's wife is working with them. There was no distinction between the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Department of Justice and the FBI. And the goal was unified, which was to get Donald Trump. And the text messages that have come out show that they had some type of insurance policy in case Mr. Trump won the presidency. This is our FBI. Forget about the FBI investigation into Clinton and Trump being compromised by these conflicts. I think the FBI has been compromised. Forget about shutting down Mr. Mueller. Do we need to shut down the FBI because it was turned into a KGB type operation by the Obama administration?
People are going to feel like that's a pretty radical statement to make.
Look, the FBI cannot be trusted to investigate high-level government corruption at this time. And right now, you see Mr. Rosenstein being blasé about the corruption that's going on in his watch. He says, well, we'll get to it when the IG report comes out. In the meantime, Mueller's operation, which has been compromised, is indicting and prosecuting people. They need protection. And I'm tired of the blasé attitude of this Justice Department and FBI towards the outrageous corruption that's been uncovered. They were hiding it, remember. They were hiding this FBI agent, having him be demoted. Been hiding it since July.
Well, okay, on to the point of Peter Strzok, who was taken off the team. This is what Democrat Congressman Nadler had to say today about that.
Peter Strzok did not say anything about Donald Trump that the majority of Americans weren't also thinking at the same time. And second, in a testament to his integrity and situational awareness, when the Office of the Inspector General made Mr. Mueller aware of these exchanges, he immediately removed Mr. Strzok from his team.
Quickly, why is that not good enough for you?
because we don't know what he was involved in up to that point in time. He may have been involved in the interview of General Flynn, for which he had to plead guilty. I would question that. Was he involved in the targeting of Manafort? Was he involved in the decision-making surrounding the Clinton email investigation? You know, the timing of that text about having an insurance policy seems to coincide with the timing of the seeking of a FISA application to spy on the Trump team. Look, we can't trust anything coming out of the Mueller investigation until we figure out what went on with these FBI texts.
And we will keep digging. We know you will as well, because every day there's a new development, a new nugget of news that raises new questions instead of more answers, it seems. Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to see you. All right, President Trump says the win by Democrat Doug Jones in the Alabama Senate race shows the need for Republicans to nominate great candidates. The loss of a GOP Senate seat made the president's so-called closing argument for a tax reform bill in Congress even more urgent. Doug McKelway is here with what's in the bill, what isn't, and whether it actually gets done before the GOP loses that extra vote that they're going to have to give up once Doug Jones is sworn in. Hello, Doug.
Hi, Shannon. Republicans are certainly moving full steam ahead to get tax reform done by next week, and indications are that they are on track to do just that. Senator John Cornyn told reporters this afternoon they plan to take the conference bill up on the Senate floor next Monday. It requires 10 hours of debate. Then they hope to pass it on Tuesday. Late today, we learned of some key adjustments that conferees believe will keep skeptical Republicans from voting no. The corporate tax rate is now set at 21% instead of 20% as originally planned, and it would take effect in 2018, not 2019.
It's at 35 right now. So if it got down to 21, I would certainly be thrilled. I would be thrilled. But we'll see. We haven't set that final figure yet, but certainly 21 is a very great difference.
That 21% rate puts more revenue in the Treasury, so legislators in exchange could drop the top individual rate to 37%, lower than either the Senate or House bills originally intended. And that trade-off solves a big problem. Lawmakers in high-tax states like Kentucky, or Connecticut, New York, California, and others had feared that cutting state and local deductions would increase taxes on their constituents. So this fix presumably keeps GOP lawmakers from those high-tax states on board. In the same vein, it gives taxpayers flexibility, offering a $10,000 cap not just on property taxes, but on income or sales taxes, depending on what you choose. The conference bill, or report as it is called, is expected to come out Friday. But really, the work is all but done by staffers who've been burning the midnight oil, and that is not sitting well with Democrats.
Operating under House and Senate and conference rules, not Putin rules.
So I would like to move that the conference committee postpone its work and activity until the new senator from the state of Alabama is sworn in to office so that he might cast the vote.
There is a snowball's chance in hell that Republicans will agree to that. They cannot afford to lose many more votes. In fact, we learned just today that Senator McCain, who voted for the Senate version of the bill, has been readmitted to the hospital. You know, Shannon, if necessary, Republicans will wheel him on the chamber floor on a stretcher to vote next week if they have to do that. Shannon, back to you.
Yeah, every vote counts. Doug McKelway, thank you very much. All right, from tax reform to reforming the FBI, much to discuss with tonight's panel. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, also a Fox News contributor, and Politico congressional reporter Alana Shore. Thank you both for coming in tonight. All right, let's start with taxes, which Doug was just talking about there. This Marist poll says that actually a majority of Americans don't think this is going to be good for them. 52% think the legislation will mostly hurt their personal family finances. 30% say it's going to help them mostly. 8% say it's not really going to make a difference, and 10% are unsure. Molly, where has the GOP failed to properly message and sell this?
Well, it's just a stunning message failure that people think that a tax bill that's actually going to cut their taxes is going to hurt them in some way. The vast majority, almost everybody, will receive a tax cut, and yet people have gotten this idea that it's actually going to harm them somehow. And so it's partly that you don't have a good explanation coming from a strong executive or people on the Hill. It's also, I think, very bad media coverage. Normally, when the American public has a false view of something, you see a lot of media coverage trying to explain how they have a false view, and that's not happening in this case. It's a very bizarre feature of the current media environment.
Well, and a lot of Democrats tend to do better, it seems like, with their messaging, whether it's about the shutdown or taxes or health care. They seem to really be able to corral the messaging in a better way than Republicans seem to be doing with something like this tax bill.
Well, I think Mitch McConnell has had the deck stacked against him because he can only afford to lose 2 votes, and now the Doug Jones is coming in 1 vote, so the media is constantly conditioned to focus on, okay, who might Democrats be able to pick off? And also, you know, it's always easiest to message from the opposition. Republicans found that when they were in the minority against President Obama, and now the shoe is on the other foot.
Okay, and now we also have these new revelations, this hearing on the Hill today where the Deputy Attorney General took heat from a lot of sides in trying to answer these questions about whether or not the Robert Mueller investigation has been compromised in some way. Here is what Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal said today when she was pressed on the potential bias of some of these investigators. Here's what she said.
Political affiliation is different from bias. I believe I'm quoting you correctly when you say that. And I want to remind my colleagues that people are allowed to have their personal opinions and their political affiliations. For instance, Special Counsel Mueller and former FBI Director James Comey and you are lifelong Republicans.
I mean, Molly, almost everybody in town has a political affiliation, but they also are employed by all of these agencies. So are we to give, you know, benefit of the doubt?
It's absolutely true that everyone is allowed to have their own political opinions. And so I think when this first came out, people said, well, you know, it's normal that you might have political opinions. What we're seeing in these texts is so far beyond normal political opinions, it's not really very funny. And you have Strzok talking about an insurance policy to protect the country in the case of a Trump. We don't have the full context.
Yeah,
we don't know exactly what's going on. But much more than that, you have, you know, Andrew Weissman, who was sending MASH notes to Sally Yates when she was not doing her job and going to a party for Hillary Clinton. You have this really disturbing news that that this top DOJ official, his wife, was working for Fusion GPS on the dossier at the same time that he's involved in this investigation. This is so much, there's so much here that is problematic, particularly that we don't have any indication after a year of searching and all these investigations of any actual treasonous collusion with Russia. We do have a lot of indication of some very dangerous behavior by our intelligence agencies in playing politics and working to undermine a democratically elected president, both before and after the election.
Well, and Alana, we got word yesterday from Ty Cobb, one of the White House attorneys involved with the president's attorney, saying it looks like Mueller is getting close to wrapping this up. With all of these things out there, do you think the American public will have confidence in this, whatever he does or doesn't find?
I think at a certain point it's going to come down to partisan politics. I mean, to what we've been discussing on this hour. Eventually, Republicans are going to release their report and Democrats are going to be faced with a choice. Do we sign on to a bipartisan conclusion on what happened here?
From the committees.
From the committees. And I think that's really going to be the pivot point for Mueller as well. Once Congress is done, Mueller will face increasing pressure, per Ty Cobb, to wrap up.
Do you think that they finish before he does? That's what you think?
I do believe they finish almost simultaneously, honestly.
Okay.
What the American people need is for the Department of Justice to start being forthright about exactly how this dossier was used, and most importantly, was it used to secure a wiretap on an opposing party's political campaign apparatus? That is a scandal of such tremendous proportion. It really needs to be answered so that people, if it's not true, people can put it to rest.
All right. Well, I think, as our previous guest said, we think we'll eventually get to those answers. Who knows when, though? Molly and Alana, great to see you both tonight. Thanks for coming in. All right. The Bangladeshi immigrant facing terrorism charges for setting off a mostly failed pipe bomb in the heart of New York City's transit system appeared in court today. Akayed Allah appeared by video from his hospital room. He's accused of detonating an explosive that was strapped to his body and badly injuring himself. No other major injuries were reported from the blast. The two public defenders who stood by Allah's hospital bed during today's proceedings did not request bail. Well, one of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's harshest critics, Congressman Matt Gaetz, joins us. He says he's gone from being the lone voice in the wilderness to now leading a growing chorus of critics. Plus, brand new details about one of the deadliest mass shootings in American history. Stick around for new developments in the Las Vegas shooting investigation. And later, a devastated Utah family is begging for the safe return of their son, who has been incarcerated along with his wife by a brutal tyrant for the past 18 months.
We've been living in a foggish nightmare for 18 months.
More than 300 text messages from a demoted FBI agent were the talk of the town today in those testy Capitol Hill hearings with Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. The agent, Peter Strzok, who was part of the Mueller special counsel team, called the president an idiot, among much other worse things. Here's how Rosenstein addressed the situation today.
The issue of bias is something different. I've discussed this with Director Mueller, and we recognize we have employees with political opinions, and it's our responsibility to make sure those opinions do not influence their actions. I believe that Director Mueller understands that and that he is running that office appropriately, recognizing that people have political views, but ensuring that those views are not in any way a factor in how they conduct themselves in office.
Republican Congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz, joins us now. All right, are you buying what he's selling today?
Oh, well, absolutely not. You would think from Mr. Rosenstein's testimony that these are people just saying, well, I like Hillary Clinton or I dislike Donald Trump. The entire reason that we have a special counsel process is to escape from conflicts of interest. But here we seem to have dove in head first into like an orgy of conflicts of interest right in Mueller's team. You've got two key relationships here. You've got Mr. Strzok and his mistress who continue to say these terrible things, not only about the president, but about their plans to in fact come in and save the country and be the insurance policy. So these are action items, Shannon, not just beliefs.
Do you give Mueller credit, though, when those were brought to his attention by the Inspector General, that he dismissed Strzok?
Yeah, but it wasn't Mueller that found him. Like, he had to basically get busted by his own Inspector General before this happened. Look, we should have had a process in place to vet the people on the Mueller team. Now, it's either one of two things. You got a circumstance where Mueller was expressly bringing people onto his team as a consequence of his bias, or he didn't care about the bias. But in either circumstance, you shouldn't have, like, the Never Trump group being the group that's investigating the president.
Okay, you're not a fan of this special counsel. Do you think there should be a second special counsel now to look into these allegations, as many other people are saying? They need to look at the FBI, the DOJ.
Of course, all Americans want to have confidence in the Department of Justice and the FBI, and right now that confidence is shattered because they've been turned into partisan political operations where people are able to go and persecute the President of the United States, which with information that is totally dubious. And I think to restore that, we've got to have more transparency, checks and balances, and stronger reporting to the Congress. It is really insulting to be a member of Congress and have the Deputy Attorney General not answer basic questions about whether taxpayer money was used to buy a dossier to undermine the president.
Okay, to this point about a secondary special counsel, this is what Senator Blumenthal, of course a Democrat on the other side of Capitol Hill, tweeted apparently today. He said, Rosenstein stood strong against disgraceful attacks by GOP congressmen on Mueller inquiry today, a shameful effort to distract and sabotage the investigation with deceptive calls for second special counsel.
Look, we have an oversight responsibility where if things aren't working right at the FBI or Department of Justice, we are the elected representatives of the people to ensure that you've got a fair process for all Americans. The evidence is overwhelming. The currently deputy director of the FBI wrote emails saying that Hillary Clinton was going to be treated special. At the same time, you've got the folks investigating the president, like Mr. Strzok, saying that he could smell the Trump voters at Walmart and that this election should have been 100 million to 0 and that there's no reasonable person that could have ever voted for Donald Trump. This is bias, but it's leading to action that is totally illegitimate, and we have a responsibility to get to the bottom of it.
Do you get a second special counsel on that point?
We absolutely should. Look, I mean, right now...
Do you think you will, though?
Well, that depends on the Attorney General. We've called on the Attorney General to step up and do his job or step aside. Right now, frankly, we see Rosenstein having more influence at the Department of Justice than our own Attorney General, and I think he could be strong right now, appoint a second special counsel, and restore confidence in these agencies that are absolutely essential to the functioning of our government and our society.
All right, politics aside, you and I do agree on college football. Go Noles.
Absolutely. Go Noles. And super excited about Willie Taggart.
Me too. All right. We agree on the coach. Good to see you, Congressman.
Good to see you.
All right. So many unanswered questions about the Las Vegas massacre. Local reporters there digging up new information from authorities about the October 1st tragedy that killed 58 victims, injured more than 500. Why are there so many unanswered questions? We're going to break down what they just found out. Plus, a Democratic Congresswoman has some choice words for the women of Capitol Hill. In the wake of the sex harassment storm, the panel takes that up shortly. On the night of October 1st, Stephen Craig Paddock shot and killed 58 people, later himself, during a Las Vegas music festival. The Las Vegas Review-Journal has obtained Vegas police search warrant records pertaining to the investigation. Here to tell us whether they help at all in understanding Paddock's motive, Randy Sutton, a retired lieutenant from Las Vegas MPD. Sir, thank you for your time tonight.
My pleasure, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I know the local media, all the media, but really those who are local there and have, connections, they're really pushing to get release of some of these records. They're getting more about the search warrants. From what you've seen, does that tell you any more about where police are in this investigation and what we may eventually find out?
Well, what it does show, it shows the progression of the investigation, and also shows you that that law enforcement is dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Remember that during a massive homicide investigation like this, search warrants are the tools of the trade, because every single little nuance, every single piece of evidence can be tainted if it isn't found properly, including even examining the body of the shooter himself. So detectives went the extra mile and made sure that they got search warrants for everything humanly possible. Now, what it also shows is the progression of the investigation is how thorough the investigators are being. Remember that they're looking for motive. They're all looking for additional suspects. They're looking for answers. And here's the frustration here is that the answers don't appear to be forthcoming in a lot of different ways. You know, normally when an investigation happens like this, you know a motive. There's a relationship. Yeah. There are records found.
A manifesto, a letter, something.
Right. And honestly, when I think of this guy, Paddock, I think of him as the boogeyman, because he shows up out of nowhere. He doesn't fit the bill of on any radar. He doesn't fit the bill of any type of looking at his profile and saying, here's a guy who would be a shooter. And everything is gone. The missing hard drive from the computer. I mean, that isn't a normal thing to do. I think this was his last way of getting back at all of us.
Yeah, and
we'll never know why I did it.
Yeah, and that may be the ultimate irony of this whole thing, is that everybody wants answers when this happens. You know, we're all sitting around saying, why has it been so quiet? We've gotten nothing. There's been no video that's been released from the hotel. We know that they have to be concerned about civil liability and lawsuits that have already been filed. But for this guy to bring in the massive stuff we're told that he brought in, you know, what does that say to you? I mean, are there not videos of whether he used a freight elevator, whether he was in the lobby? Maybe there aren't videos on every floor, but certainly you would think there's something.
I am sure that there are videos of him going through the hotel. You know, he didn't lock himself in the room for the entire time he was there. I'm sure that he went downstairs, and there's no doubt in my mind that there is some video of him. Now, but is it anything of any consequence? Does it show him with other people? Does it? I mean, it doesn't. Certainly is not a smoking gun here, if you'll pardon the expression, when it comes down to this individual. Now, is there something? Probably there is, but what are you going to show? Just a little piece of videotape that shows this guy, you know, going to the men's room in the casino? That's not going to be anything of any value to anyone. So it's about the investigation. Are there any accomplices? Is there a motive? What was it that kicked this guy into this weirdness that caused him to kill and caused him to change the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people? And everybody here, Shannon, I can tell you that everyone that lives here is touched by this in some way. We all know people that were either killed or were there or were maimed or shot or know someone who was. This is a very personal investigation for law enforcement.
Yeah, and we have to remember that there are hundreds of people still recovering from this. We know that media outlets are pressing to get a lot of things that are under seal. There was supposed to be a hearing December 7th. That's been kicked to a different judge on January 16th. Maybe we will learn more then. Randy Sutton, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up, the Secret Service says it was not involved in the termination process or resignation process of one of President Trump's advisors and former contestant on his TV show. What really happened? We're going to try to figure that out. And another woman steps forward to accuse a Nevada congressional Democrat of unwanted sexual advances. What he is saying tonight, the late breaking developments next. Secret Service is denying any involvement in the termination or resignation of one of President Trump's advisors. We're getting conflicting stories. Former apprentice contestant Omarosa Meninggal. News reports had claimed she was physically removed from the White House property last night. Secret Service says it had no part in that. According to multiple reports, she demanded to see the president and tried to get access to the White House residence before being escorted off the property. President Trump tonight actually tweeting thank yous to her on Twitter, wishing her, quote, continued success. All right, breaking with House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who has called on him to step aside. Other top Democrats have stood by Nevada Democrat Congressman Reuben Kihuen. They said that the rising star of the Democratic Party had been accused by one woman of making unwanted sexual advances. He has denied those allegations. They said, you know what, we should let this be played out and let him go through the investigative process. But tonight, the Nevada Independent is publishing a lengthy interview with a second woman who says that Kihuen touched her on her thighs or buttocks on 3 separate occasions without her consent. Sent her all kinds of harassing text messages as well. That's according to her. Meanwhile, a surprising comment from Ohio Democratic Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who reportedly told a private caucus meeting this, quote, I saw a member yesterday with her cleavage so deep it was down to the floor, and what I've seen, it's really an invitation. Kaptur has since clarified her remarks, saying she never meant to suggest that women are ever to blame for harassment. Back with us now, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, also a Fox News contributor, and Politico congressional reporter Alana Shore. Thank you both for coming back. I want to make sure that we read this clarification that came from Congresswoman Kaptur. She said, under no circumstances is it the victim's fault if they're harassed in any way. I shared the stories from my time here in the context of Me Too legislation and how we can elevate the decorum and the dress code to protect women from what is a pervasive problem here and in society at large. Alana, your reaction?
Well, Paul Ryan just recently made it, okay for women to wear sleeveless dresses after Nancy Pelosi didn't change the dress code. So I'm not sure what she means by further changes to the dress code. She seems to be suggesting it should be more rigorous again. The bottom line is Democrats are facing some troubles. Given Franken and Conyers and now Kihuen, they know that they have problems within their own ranks, and this is just off message.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. We had this initial allegation against him, Molly. He said at the time, this came up before I was elected. The DCCC and Nancy Pelosi looked into it. They were satisfied with what they found. She went on to campaign for me and help raise money and do those kinds of things. She says that's not accurate as to how that went down. So now we have a second woman tonight. Here's what he said to the Nevada Independent. During my 10 years in the legislature, I dated several different women out of respect for their privacy. I won't discuss my communications or any other details of those relationships. But this woman who presented the text messages and all those kinds of things says we never dated. It wasn't that kind of relationship. Where do we go from here?
Right. It's a fine statement to make had they been dating, but there's no indication that this woman and this member dated. Having said that, this is the second story we have about this person. It's based on an anonymous source. We don't have the name to go with it. So the idea that someone would be forced to step down based on anonymous accusations of what really, I think, you can definitely find it to be boorish behavior, way too aggressive, sexually inappropriate even, but not really at the level that you would normally see someone stepping down for. I think this might be the prime type of situation where voters can decide whether this meets their criteria for what they want in a congressman or not, as opposed to just using the mob to get rid of him.
Well, and on the other side of the aisle, Congressman Blake Farenthold, a Republican, he's already under a House ethics investigation based on a settlement that he had with a staffer. We've now had a male staffer, former male staffer of his, stepping forward to saying that he was making really disgusting, inappropriate comments. So much the male staffer felt like it was a hostile environment, and he ended up putting in his notice. So this isn't really something that is about party, and people who are trying to combat this problem, Alana, say there should be nothing partisan about this, but there has to be consistency across the board with how these cases are handled.
Absolutely, and I think both parties recognize that's the case. The problem is they have so far to come in terms of writing a bill that can actually tackle this problem. It's clear that just training isn't going to cut it, right? But do you dismantle the current system for handling the complaints and replace it with something new, as Congresswoman Spear says? Do you just remodel that thing from the ground up? And how do you change the standards on things like anonymity, on the time frame to file a complaint? We're just now starting to have that discussion.
Yeah, and there's a push to unmask everybody who has been involved in one of these settlements. Molly, do you think that'll happen?
Well, I think that these settlements are, particularly when it's taxpayer funds being used to fund these things, it's very disturbing that this was a practice. It just seems that there is such a range of behavior here, from truly unacceptable, the type of thing from which you should be driven out of polite society, to stuff that's much more borderline. And I think it would be helpful if we had some sexual ethics that we actually understood and agreed to, and instead of flipping from, we've had a culture that frankly accepted all sorts of horrible behavior, and it's not just in politics and media, there are all sorts of industries, but you don't want to flip to the other side, and you also don't want to make it where people can't have redemption for bad behavior, where they feel that there's no way forward for them.
I don't know about you two, but I mean, working around this environment and being here for years, I mean, I feel like these cases are going to continue to crop up on the Hill, just based on rumors we all heard over the years. It seemed like this was just the beginning.
Probably so. And we're hearing that, there will be big reports coming out with 20 or 30 members of Congress. And when you're actually at the stage where you're bundling cases, you've got a bad problem.
Yeah. And at this time, we hear from people who are still afraid to come forward, because even if they feel like they'll be proven correct in some way, they worry about the future implications to their career. Because even if you do win a settlement or something else, it doesn't mean that other people are going to be really gung-ho to hire you and make you part of their team.
And this is why everybody should think about treating each other well in their...
Yeah, let's use a little common sense.
Absolutely.
All right, great to see you for a second time. Thank you very much. All right. In Kentucky, we're hearing the Bullitt County Sheriff's Office is confirming that a Republican state legislature, a lawmaker there, Dan Johnson, shot and killed himself earlier this evening. Johnson had recently denied allegations of sexual misconduct. He was accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl in the basement of his home. At least one. Well, earlier tonight, Johnson posted a message to his Facebook that has since been removed. It read that PTSD is a sickness that will take my life. I cannot handle it any longer. It has won this life, but heaven is my home. Johnson was 57 years old. Coming up, a Mormon missionary who went to Venezuela for love, now in serious trouble and possibly stuck as a pawn between two countries with grave political differences. His mother joins us shortly. She is pleading for help.
He's about as an innocent of a kid as you can find out there. He's the light of our family.
Of Otto Warmbier, the American student who was arrested for allegedly stealing a North Korean banner, imprisoned and then returned home in a vegetative state, only to die with his parents at his bedside. Now, a 25-year-old former Mormon missionary from Utah is ill, facing a trial in a socialist country that is extremely hostile to the U.S., and his parents are worried for his life. A Venezuelan judge ruling that Joshua Holt must stand trial on weapons charges. His mother, Laurie Holt, joins us now to break down this case. Laurie, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and we know this has got to be an extremely difficult situation.
Thank you.
So apparently
Thank you for having me on.
Apparently there was a hearing yesterday. Josh and his wife have been held for more than a year, is my understanding. The U.S. Embassy official was there at the courthouse but not allowed to go into the courtroom. And now they're saying that Josh must go to trial on multiple weapons charges. There have been allegations that he was hoarding or stockpiling weapons. What can you tell us?
That is correct. We have witnesses that have proven that he is innocent, that they brought the weapons in. So out of the 18 hearings that he has had scheduled, he's only actually been before a judge 3 times. And that was for the defense to give their part, the prosecution to give their part. And then yesterday, the judge, we know, didn't want to give what she knew she should give. Instead, she turned it over to make it go to trial.
Mm-hmm. We've got a little bit of audio that we want people to hear that gives a bit of a look and a listen at how Josh seems to be faring. So we want to let folks listen to this.
I'm very dizzy and I can't think. My stomach hurts. Super bad. I don't know what to do.
Laurie, how do you feel hearing that, your son?
I don't want to ever not see my son alive again, and just what has happened with Otto. Josh sounds like he's on his deathbed to me. That is not my Josh. It's his voice, but he is pleading for help. And I don't know how else to get him that help, but to go to the public and put the pressure on our government to do something more than what you've done so far, because obviously it's not working.
I know that Senator Hatch, your home senator from your home state of Utah, has been very vocal on this. The State Department has addressed this now publicly as well. The president has been very vocal in many of these cases in fighting to get people home. Have you been able to have any contact with the White House or anyone that is offering you any kind of hope here?
Besides Senator Hatch, I did visit the White House. President Trump was there, but I did not visit with him. They did not really tell me anything. She kind of, I don't think she really knew the whole story about what had happened. And so I kind of get the story all the time of we're working on it. Things are in motion, but nobody ever tells me what's in motion. And so for me, it's like, I'm his mother. I'm not going to tell the world what you're doing. I just need to know what you're doing. Give me some hope and give me an idea of a time frame of when you're going to get him out or how you're trying to get him out.
Because for every day, this is the number one thing on your mind. Laurie, please keep us apprised of what's happening, and we'll stand by. Thank you so much for your time. Our prayers are with you.
Thank you.
More news right after this.